President Trump is a man of his word, and he knows what he wants. And he definitely wants to win the Iran war, and he's going to do it with an extended blockade. Or he's going to do it with a walkaway victory, or he's going to do it with going back to war. Apparently, he knows exactly what he's going to do, and he's going to do all three of those, or at least that's what you might think if you're listening to the mainstream media last night. All of these things were swirling around. And then the first thing we see this morning is President Trump trying to be Tony Stark here from the Iron Man movie. And no more Mr. Nice Guy. Get rolled up to the front of that again because his message is Iran can't get their act together. Iran can't get their act together. They don't know how to sign a non-nuclear deal. They better smarten up pretty soon. What in the heck is going on here? And trying to sort this out because I'm having a hard time even getting through this intro here. Is Larry Johnson back with us? Larry this Earth Johnson, of course, because he knows everything. That's why we always reach out to him. Sonar21.com, son of a new American Revolution on Substack and former CIA intel analyst. Larry, help me out here. Especially given last night, and we're going to get into all three of these in a minute. Trump's either going to ask aides to say what would be the reaction if we have an extended blockade, what would be the reaction if we just declare victory and walk away, and what would happen if we actually go back to full military. That's all the things that were just last night at separate times of the evening. And then this is what we see first thing in the morning. What's the message here?
Well, let's start with see if Alice Cooper will file copyright infringement. I mean, remember Alice Cooper's song, "No More Mr. Nice Guy, No More Mr. Clean"? We could have teed that up. So the announce all this spend that's coming out overnight is a reaction to the communications between Iran and the United States that transpired over the weekend. It started last Friday with the Foreign Minister Arachi going to Islamabad, presenting basically it was the same demands that they had given to the United States 2 weeks earlier, but with some important differences now. Basically saying, first and foremost, you got to drop the blockade. If you don't drop the blockade, there's nothing else to talk about. Number two, we're not going to deal anything on nukes. The nuclear issue is off the table. We're signatory to the Non-Proliferation Treaty. We're in compliance with that. You don't have any right to tell us what to do. Basically telling the United States to shove it. And then Arachi left, so the Pakis were delivering that message to D.C. And then Arachi went to Oman, worked with the Omani leader on how they're going to divide up the spoils and keeping the Strait of Hormuz blocked. Then went back on Sunday to hear what the U.S. had to say in response to his message. He got that. Thanked the Pakis very much for all of their help in trying to mediate the situation. Then he proceeded to Moscow for the sit down with Putin on Monday at St. Petersburg, and out of that got from Vladimir Putin, Iran, we're 100% behind you. We got your back. So Iran right now is saying, the blockade's got to be lifted, and they'll lift it militarily if necessary. So I don't take that threat lightly. I think Iran is prepared to act. That said, the United States really has no options. They've been sold this bill of goods by Scott Bessent, and they're relying upon some outside consulting firm that says, all we got to do is don't let any more Iranian vessels out, and they have to fill up all the tanks, and they're going to run out of capacity. And once they stop filling those tanks, they have to basically shut the oil wells down, and it'll collapse their system.
Yeah, apparently within 3 days it'll just blow up.
Yeah,
from the inside.
Yeah.
That was 4 days ago, and I didn't see any explosions overnight. So I'm sorry I interrupted.
Well, no. That was good that you did, because then you say, well, if that's true for Iran, well, what about Saudi Arabia, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Kuwait? What about them? Because they're not pumping or storing anything right. They're out. So we're basically going to destroy the Middle East oil supply. But the fact is, Iran is not in that kind of situation, despite what Bessent says, despite what that consulting firm says. The Iranians have a number of other options beyond Karg Island, but let's also recognize that this notion of being able to shut down the exit of Iranian oil from the Persian Gulf is an impossible task for the United States. We only have a limited number of ships over there. If they stop and seize a tanker, they don't just say, okay, we got you, tag, you're it, and then they sail away. Oh, no. You have to keep a U.S. vessel attached to that tanker wherever you're going to take it. So just do the math. If Iran runs 20 ships out, that's 20 ships from the U.S. Navy that have got to be attached to each one of them if they seize them. And the point is they can't. They can seize a fraction of it, and that's what Iran's reacting to, but they cannot shut it down at all. That is the mythology that we're faced with. So militarily, the Air Force general that's in charge of, they call it the Combined Forces Aviation Component Commander. You remember what it's like in the military. You got to have an acronym for everything.
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah, for sure.
The CFACC. So the CFAC is going, we're running out of precision missiles. If we go in and hit more targets, we're not going to fundamentally change the situation. This is going to be a waste of resources. And then the Combined Forces Maritime Component Commander, an admiral, said, yeah, what he said, I agree with him. So that's
let me ask you a question on that, Larry, on that point. According to CENTCOM, they were bragging just before the ceasefire went into effect that they had struck somewhere around 14,000 targets. That's not ammunition, but that's targets that were hit. And one might reasonably ask, if 14,000 targets, then apparently we hit everything we aimed at, didn't cause them to do any of the things we wanted, and I mean none of them, then by what logic? Well, even a better question first, what else would we shoot at that we didn't get with 14,000? That's this alleged, oh, well, that was 75%, and there's another 25% we didn't. Do you believe that there was 75% of the targets that we hit and we left 25% unattacked?
Yeah, and we left the most important ones for last because, we weren't really keen on winning this thing up front. We wanted to draw it out. Yeah, I mean, it's nonsense. And that's again, the word is filtering out amongst the different subordinates that the bosses are going, nah, we don't think this is a very good idea at all. So that's been communicated to Trump. And that was apparently one of the, at least General Dan Kane, that's what he reportedly told Trump on Monday. We see too many risks if we try to renew fighting with Iran. Number one, we're going to deplete what are already scarce inventories of precision-guided missiles. That's number one. Number two, the aviation, the air defense systems in Iran are now more robust, more capable than they were 3 weeks ago. So the risk of getting pilots shot down is quite high. So when you factor all of that in, and third, the Iranian ability to retaliate is still significant and will inflict greater damage on Israel and the other Gulf nations. So he says, so therefore, don't recommend a kinetic option. So then that leads to this whole nonsense. Oh, we'll break them economically. Yeah, just like we broke Cuba economically over 66 years. They're still standing. So this is Trump. What Trump wants is an easy win. Give me something so I can walk away, wave the victory flag, and that we're done with this. But that's not happening. And we're seeing now this week, as predicted, with Alex of Reportify, that the price of oil now is going to start shooting up every day. It's going to get worse and worse and worse because there is no alternative supply out there. As long as now that 20% of the Gulf is shut down, it's shut down. Iran can still get some oil out, but again, the United States is going to interfere with some of that. So this is Trump is going to be faced with an economic crisis that is going to force him to have to shift away from dealing with Iran per se. He's going to have to try to save the U.S. dollar.
Well, and we'll see if he even gets that far. But he's got a lot of steps that have to go before he even gets a chance to weigh in on saving the dollar. Although it may be too late on that already. But I want to take a look at these three options that came out last night. If we can kind of talk some of the pros and cons and look at what some other people are saying about them. Let's start with the first one here. Trump tells, this is the Wall Street Journal last night, Trump tells aides to prepare for an extended blockade of Iran. But then some analysis out this morning said that there's a must read on this energy report here. This analysis suggests that the U.S. blockade of Iran's oil exports will not cause catastrophic or even very serious damage to its upstream oil industry. If and when the blockade is relaxed, Iran will probably be able to resume its production promptly at about 70% and regain most of its pre-war capacity within months. And when you look at history, and this is one of the President Trump's biggest shortfalls that he doesn't do, what you're seeing here is a number of years of a chart. You probably can't read the small print on it on the bottom, but there's around January 2020 is the second tick on the left, and you see this big drop where this is Iranian oil production. And somewhere around the time, actually this precedes a little bit the pandemic, but for various reasons, I think this may have been some sanctions and other stuff that we did. They went to nearly nothing for close to 6 months. And then once the signals changed, they immediately turned back up and it was no big deal. So there's history behind Iran dealing with either forced or natural occurring blockades where their stuff goes down and they're able to get through with it. So if that's President Trump's one of his big things, one of his big options here, it seems like it's a complete non-starter because it won't work.
Well, not only that, the blockade, let's not worry about the exports because the Iranians have already shown they can basically run the blockade with exports. The other issue is imports. And according to the Pakistani, I think it's FARS news agency, Pakistan is ramping up, sending thousands of containers overland. Normally, that might have been on a ship, they're going overland. So, again, you want to blockade a country, you got to be able to shut down all of its borders and access points. Can't do that with Iran. Too damn big. It's got access through the Caspian Sea to Russia. It's got access to Turkmenistan through its border. It's got access to Pakistan. So yeah, there is no way for the blockade to work to accomplish what they're claiming it's going to accomplish.
Yeah, and so you can see on the map right here, there have been 6 overland. This is the Pakistan Iranian border here, and there are 6 overland passages that were agreed to by the two sides to get traffic to be flowing from there. And you see, as you mentioned, there's Turkmenistan and several other things up into the north. And then there's the Caspian Sea. It's not a huge one, but it's there. It's an alternative. You just can't knock it out just by having the Gulf of Oman blocked here, which I think right here is the zero line that we've set. And I think even at that, I think you've mentioned before, even at that, there's still tankers that are getting through even with the blockade.
Well, yeah, see, all the tankers have to do, the U.S. ships have to stay about 220 miles offshore. If they get within 175 miles, they're vulnerable to being attacked by Iran. So what does Iran do? Sends the tankers, they stay within 100 miles ashore. And if the U.S. dares to approach, they can be attacked. Like I said, the guys that are sitting in Washington, man, it's not what we used to call the best and the brightest. It's like the worst and the stupidest.
Okay, so let's see if there's any more opportunity to expose that trip.
Yeah.
Number 2 is the walk away theory. U.S. intel agencies examining how Iran would react if Trump just declares victory and walk away. There was a piece out this morning by Danny Citrinowitz, who's actually a really good analyst here, former Israeli intel guy. And he says, in the event of a unilateral U.S. declaration of victory following the war, Tehran is likely to interpret the outcome as a strategic success. That's kind of an understatement. Iran would frame the situation as evidence of the axis of resistance successfully withstanding pressure from superior Western military power. This perception would drive both internal consideration and external assertiveness. How do you see that?
Well,
the whole walk away theory.
Yeah, the walk away theory is Trump's best option to exit this.
And I'm sorry, Larry, would you also, for those who may not be aware, what is the walk away theory and why is that the best one?
Well, we saw a preview of it in last May in the Red Sea, where Trump declared victory. Hey, those Houthis, they've capitulated. We're going home. Now, the Houthis hadn't capitulated, but he was declaring victory and walking away. So he would say, look, we have decimated their Air Force. We've decimated their Navy. There's nothing left. They no longer have air defense. We've destroyed half of their missile force. And their nuclear program, as I said, a year ago, has been obliterated. So therefore, there's no need for us to continue this war. Iran has learned its lesson and withdraw, because Iran, despite all the Western claims that, oh, it's this aggressive terrorist organization, oh, it's attacking its neighbors. It's never attacked its neighbors until it was attacked on February 28th. In the entire history of the Iranian Islamic Republic, they have not gone out and attacked another country. They were attacked in the 1980s by Iraq. And, and Danny, this is a point I think policymakers and the 99.9% of Americans are missing. When you look at the top 5 sort of leaders within the current Iranian government, Pezeshkian, the president, Araghchi, the foreign minister, Ghalibaf, the speaker of parliament, the Ayatollah Khamenei, and then the head of the IRGC. All 5 men are IRGC veterans of that 1980-88 war with Iraq. Pezeshkian wasn't a fighter. He was a medic. But from your own experience, the men you go into battle with, you create bonds and friendships that are lifelong.
Indeed.
They are not temporary. They're deep. They're sometimes deeper than family relations. So understand that this group of people we're dealing with right now, despite the crap that's being put out to say, oh, they're an internal division, they don't know who's in charge. That is a load of horse manure, because the fact is they're comrades from a previous battle. Think of this. This is like having the guys who fought World War II on the U.S. side. Now all of a sudden they're all in leadership positions. Same thing. And now they've been attacked again. How do you think our World War II veterans would have responded if we had been attacked? So that's where these guys are coming from. They are dead serious about what they're doing. They understand the cost of war. Donald Bone Spur Trump doesn't. He had his bone spurs. Oh, I can't serve. I can barely walk. So you've got the only guy you have within the Trump cabinet that has any military experience is Pete Hegseth. And it turns out he's a bonehead. So beyond that, everybody else is, played Call of Duty or something on the computer. But this Iranian leadership is different, damn different. And so
how is that going to impact this whole walk away? I mean, if President Trump does something like you described in the Red Sea or so, but what does that leave on the ground in his wake?
So they'll let the United States walk away. Great. And then they will be negotiating with the Saudis and with the Qataris. They're already negotiating with Qatar and Oman, and even try with the UAE to come to a new modus vivendi. So, they're not looking to, quote, conquer the whole Gulf Arab states, but what they want is some assurances that they're not going to be attacked again like they were on February 28th. And to that end, they'll make sure that there are no more U.S. bases there. Let the United States, they'll welcome it. But the U.S. commentators are trying to say, oh, they're going to then step up and conquer all their neighbors. sorry, that's not Iran's history, at least over the last 50 years.
It's also not their military capacity. They can't conquer anything. All they can do is throw some missiles and drones to defend themselves, but they can't take anything. And you mentioned the bases. What does that walk away theory equal in the bases? Do we go back and rebuild and go back to the way it was before? Do we walk away from that too? Because that's not been part of the walk away theory that I've heard.
That's going to be at least a $10 billion project to rebuild those bases at minimum, which the United States doesn't have that money. We're already, the United States is entering a financial crisis, and it just doesn't realize it fully yet. In the last, about 2 weeks ago, the United States debt increased to 39 trillion from 38 trillion. That jump took place in the space of 77 days, less than 3 months. So we could see another situation that within 2 more months, we've gone up another $1 trillion. Because Trump's spending and the Congress is spending. So the money keeps getting spent and on failed military ventures such as this. So if they walk away, Iran's not going to come chasing after us. But that's the one that will not let us walk away is Israel, because Israel's it's in a fight for its own survival.
Yeah, of its own making.
Yeah,
it shouldn't have had to been in there. So then let's move to the third one. So if the first one, the blockade, extend the blockade, that's a bad one. And if the best one of the best of a bad lot, I should caveat, is the walk away theory, just because of, well, the alternative is option 3, which President Trump is thinking about, which is kind of the worst one, which is the duke it out. This is in the Axios here, where oddly enough, the headline's kind of misleading. It says the Iran conflict is in a new Cold War. But then when you look on the inside here, it says some of Trump's senior advisors want him to maintain the U.S. blockade and impose sanctions before going back to bombing. That's one option. And then the other side, Trump is also consulting with hawks. It says outside the administration. They seem kind of inside to me, including Washington Post columnist Mark Thiessen, that famed international relations theorist and great military mind, retired Army General Jack Keane, more on him in a second, and Lindsey Graham, all are advising Trump to take some kind of military action now to try and break the current deadlock. That's what people are trying to do now. And let me, nothing personal here. I'm not trying to hurt your feelings, but I'm afraid you're going to have to be inflicted with a Jack Keane.
Oh my God.
We can't look at the regime through the prism of United States logic, values, and reason. We have to look at the regime in terms of who they really are. Hardliners are running the regime. What matters the most to them is to stay in power. They will ride this economic peril out. They don't care about the suffering of their people. Shutting electricity down, gas lines, and other economic indicators that the people are suffering. That does not move them. What does move them is the desire to stay in power. That is why we must go back to combat operations and maintain the blockade and use our intelligence services to undermine this regime so it does not just suffer economic collapse, but political collapse as well.
Now, he's saying, no, do the bad option first, the blockade, and let's do the worst option number 3 and go back. We have to go back to combat operations, he said, and we have to finish the job. By the way, in a separate clip that I didn't get today, he also says, and by the way, anybody channeling Mark Thiessen again, the reason I put these on there is because Trump is listening to these people. Yeah. So it's important to understand what they're saying. Mark Thiessen said, we should assassinate any leader that has a negotiating stance different from what we want. And Jack Keane said the exact same thing. We should have no problem just doing that. So what do you say to his idea? What if President Trump listens to him? What do you expect to happen?
Yeah, you got to wonder about Keane and his thought process. The only one that's damaged electricity and turned electricity off in Iran has been the United States through its bombing. The only one that's inflicted suffering on the Iranian population is the United States. And we've been doing that for 46 years. Most Americans do not know that it was the United States that provided precursor chemicals that were used. They were essential for making the chemical weapons that Iraq used against Iran back in the 1980s, and provided the intelligence so Iraq would know where to use those chemical weapons. Okay, understand that. So we weren't some passive observer. And so now here we've gone, and we start a war. We kill 168 little girls, ages 6 to 12, as well as some of their parents and some of their siblings. Keen's a madman. If he was the one actually making these decisions, he should be tried as a war criminal, which is what he is, at least in terms of his thought process. The Iranians, this is a transformative experience for Iran. When they had the attack in the 1980s, that consolidated for sort of the us and them mentality, because here was the United States aggressively trying to paying Saddam basically to try to destroy Iran. That failed. That war was concluded with a peace agreement in 1988. But now, since then, from 1988 on, there had never been this full-blown attack such as occurred on, last June, but then really came to the fore on February 28th. That has had that galvanizing effect on the teenagers, the people in their 20s and in their 30s. And then that's combined with, you've got this generation, let's call it Iran's version of the greatest generation. They fought and stopped Iraq, who was fully backed by the United States 40 years ago. Now they've done it again. They've stood up to the full power of the U.S. military and Israel and stopped them. They've been unable to defeat Iran. And that is feeding as well into furthering the legitimacy of the existing government, which the United States doesn't understand. And Jack Keane, with all of his, how you got to answer the question, how are you going to use military force? And despite all their, agitation for a ground force, the one thing we see that within the CENTCOM chain of command, they have an aviation component commander. They have a maritime component commander. They do not have a ground force component commander. And so there will be no ground operations until we see if CENTCOM moves to select a ground force component commander, then stand by. Yeah, we're going to do something stupid.
Well, as it turns out, he does have an idea of why he thinks this is going to work. And hold your laughter until the end. They're really, really weak, the Iranians are now, and they've never been weaker.
To me, the obvious pathway forward is finish what we started. The negotiations have not worked. So go back to the combat operations, finish up the last 2 weeks that we were not able to complete, about 25% of what is left. Go back to the original objective, take away all of their offensive capability so that they will no longer be a predator in the region. Let's accomplish that mission. Let's also open the Straits of Hormuz. All of that makes some sense. And at the same time, if we're not already doing it, I think the Mossad and the CIA should be doing everything that they can inside of Iran to undermine this regime, because there is no doubt the regime is getting weaker by the day.
And I'm sorry, if that sounds familiar to you, I've got one more that I'm going to have to impose upon you. Jack Keane's right there saying we need to go back in because they've never been weaker. Now, if that sounds familiar, it should, because this is what he said last January.
There are two things that are completely different than the previous demonstrations. One is that the regime is at its weakest point in 45 years. Politically, they can't meet the social and political and economic aspirations of the people. Economically, they're in the tank, to be sure, and with no prospect of recovering. And militarily, they just lost a war. They've lost their platform in Syria. Their proxies are, by and large, decapitated and almost almost eliminated, to be sure. And the result of all of that is they are in a fundamentally weak position.
Then we launched a war a little over a month from that time, about a month and a half.
Yeah.
And now then, after 40 days of war, after them withstanding everything and having the Strait of Hormuz in their hands, and we can't pry it out, he's still going back to this, their weak thing. I mean, Larry, at some point, doesn't even somebody like this guy, doesn't he at some point say, hey, are you stupid? I'm not going to listen to you again, because that's what got me in this problem in the first place.
Yeah, no, they're in an enclosed echo chamber. You know, they're not letting anything from the outside penetrate. John Kiriakou the other day remarked that he was watching some of the film footage of people that are in the streets supporting the government right now, waving flags in support. And he remarked there was this one rather, let's call her a large woman who looked very masculine, that probably qualify as sort of the stereotypical lesbian. And she was out waving and shouting slogans in support of the government. His point was, yeah, maybe 2 months ago before this attack, she might have been an opponent of the government, but not now. It's rally around the flag time, that even somebody like that you would think would be a natural to be an opponent to this Islamic Republic, is out supporting the Islamic Republic. That's what we've done. We've united the Iranian people in a way they have not been united in, really since 1988. So this is a heck of a job. Well done, guys.
And you know what? Does anyone inside this echo chamber you're talking about look at the cost? I mean, I'm just tossing some things up here. This is as of yesterday. Jet fuel is 70% higher, sulfur 60, Brent 52% and counting. You see the list there: urea, diesel, gasoline, etc. Then you look at some of the other here, especially this on fertilizer itself, which is, dropped almost off the table. And that's going to have consequences that are already baked in for the harvest season. So we're going to be paying higher food prices coming up. I mean, does anybody pay attention to those things? All of which, 100% of everything I just showed you, is because of the war Jack Keane advocated that we start. Now we can't finish it, and he wants to start it over and just try harder on it. I mean, it just sounds so insane to say it out loud, but surely President Trump isn't really thinking about that.
No, well, look, we're in the it's the boiling frog problem, as opposed to finishing the creme brulee. And you're going to go, okay, what the hell is Johnson talking about? Okay,
can't wait to find out.
So when they bring out the creme brulee to your table, they bring out this little torch and they torch it right away, man. It gets flash fried right in front of your eyes. It's instantaneous. You can see it. The boiling frog thing is, you put the frog in the water. It's cool water. Then you turn on the fire, and the water gradually heats, and it heats, and it heats, and all of a sudden, then it's boiling. But you don't realize, if you're the frog, you don't realize you're getting cooked until it's too late. We're in the boiling frog situation with all of these, with the economic costs as an example. A year ago, I've got two big Rottweilers, so I feed them raw meat, hamburger. I was paying $14 for this log of hamburger that would feed them for about a week and a half. Gradually, since then, when I went to the store the other day, it was $21. So we're looking at about 50% increase in a year. And I said I didn't begin to realize the cost until boom, there it is. And that's what's now starting to hit the Western economies, that the oil prices are now ticking up, and these costs that are spread out, that up to this point they haven't been immediately obvious, but now, you want to go buy an airline ticket, good luck. If they're available, they're going to be very, you're paying 2 to 3 times what you were paying a year ago. It's like you used to be able to get a flight from New York to Heathrow in the UK last year for $275 coach. Now it's $755. So that those costs that start cascading through the system, it's going to affect Trump's ability to govern, because people are then going to be upset, and the members of Congress will finally understand, good God, we're in trouble. Up to this point, they've been so good at lying to themselves about, oh, we got this under control. Oh, we have absolutely devastated the Iranian military capability. And yet, it's just this past week, was it the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, came out with an article detailing, no, actually, a lot of Iran's capabilities are quite intact.
Yeah,
and not destroyed. That, in fact, an F5, this would be like, an elderly gentleman going into a boxing ring and knocking somebody out, but an F5 flew into Kuwait and hit a U.S. military base. I mean, that plane is 50, 60 years old. It was a plane that we gave to the Shah, which to show how long ago that was. So Iran is very, very far from being out of the fight. And in fact, what's taking place is both Russia and China are stepping up their support for Iran. They're not backing away.
And by the way, this has given another huge PR campaign victory. The Iranians have made a video about that. Of course, they're embellishing a lot of stuff, but this just shows, how we've handed over this victory to them, how scared we are, and all this other kind of stuff. They've been pretty good at doing the media campaign against us, whether it's this or the Lego stuff, and this is not doing ourselves any favor.
Oh, I'd beg to differ. Pretty good. They are incredible. I have never seen a PSYOP campaign like what they're putting on, with such cleverness, such social relevance, such powerful messaging. Hell, I never saw CIA do anything like this. And the Russians, they suck at it too. Iran, you know what? If Iran wants to get out of the oil business and go into, hey, let us show you how to do information operations, man, that could be a lucrative venue for them. Because the stuff really is remarkable. Of course, I'm biased because they made a Lego video about me. So,
did you get one of them? I saw that Mearsheimer was too. I feel kind of left out. So,
yeah,
but
it was on the when I talked about the struggle, the Kane and Trump dust up over using nukes. They made an entire Lego video about it. So they, got my name in the thing, and they don't. Oh, unfortunately, they don't have a Larry Lego with a shirt.
That's okay. That's a failure on their part. So apparently they're not that great. But
if they did that, boy, they would be out of this world.
yeah. We'll have to get on about that. Let's talk a little bit here about what this looks like from the Iranian side. What we've talked about, what the Trump options are here. I want to show you here. This is a comment by Trita Parsi here. I think it was yesterday about how the Iranian side would be looking at this issue of the blockade.
And the largest situation is that both sides believe that they have an ability to sustain themselves better than the other. The US side thinks that this blockade of a blockade is going to be some sort of a silver bullet, and that it's going to lead to the Iranians eventually collapsing or coming and begging for a deal in the manner that Trump keeps on saying that they are, whereas in reality, clearly they're not. The Iranians believe that this situation will lead to oil prices over 100. We saw today that they jumped quite a bit, and that Trump is really not going to be able to get to a more normal situation as long as he continues the blockade. If Trump had not done the blockade, which is he kind of walks away, Iran controls the straits, but the oil is flowing because the Iranians are not going to stop the flow. They only make money if they actually charge tolls. You can only charge tolls if you let the ships through. That would actually have pushed down oil prices. Trump would not have achieved much except for getting out of the war he should never have started. But it would have pushed down oil prices and the pressure on him would have reduced. He's actually pressuring himself with this blockade.
So that's
Yeah.
obviously what he thinks about that. But what about the Iranian side? How does this play for them, and how are they going to get out of it?
Well, they've been facing sanctions for 46 years. And that's one of the reasons you saw Arachi go to Russia, and that there have been similar consultations with the Chinese. So, and the BRICS conference convenes next, I think, in May in India. So you're going to see Iran taking a much larger role in BRICS and uh, expanding its trade relations with both Russia and China. Because remember, 10 years ago, Russia and China signed on to the JCPOA, which imposed very onerous penalties on Iran if they didn't comply. So back then, both the Chinese and Russians had the attitude that there was this thing called international law, and that if we all followed it, we'd all get along. Both of them now realize that the international law thing is a fraud, that the United States believes in law of the jungle, and therefore they see in Iran a proxy that if what the United States is trying to do to Iran, they will do to Russia and China. And, from the Chinese perspective, actually, this is great. They love this because they're not having to put any of their military forces in a position to confront the United States. They simply support Iran, who in its war with the United States and Israel is depleting key weapons systems, both offensive and defensive. This I think it was a CNN report claimed that they've depleted 50% of the PAC-3 missiles for the Patriot systems. That's not true. It's closer to 95%. And I can explain that those are not my numbers making up. It is when you realize they made initially between 2015 and to the end of December of 2025, total of 6,420 missiles total, and that since then, about 1,500 of those interceptors were sold to South Korea, Saudi Arabia, and Australia, New Zealand. So, subtract that from the 6,000, that gets you down to say roughly 4,500. Then the United States gave another 1,000 to a guy in Ukraine named Zelensky, and he exhausted that supply. And then they used a batch in the 12-day war, probably about another 1,000. And then in this latest war, they've used at least 2,000. I mean, it's, the numbers are zero. So here's China going, man, if Iran keeps this up, the United States is not going to have any air defense. And because you said, well, the U.S. can always build more. Oh, really? Look at how many rare earth minerals are required to produce a PAC-3 interceptor missile or a THAAD interceptor missile. Guess what? It's about 6 different rare earth minerals. And God, who controls the supply of those? Oh, yeah, that'd be China. So all of a sudden now the United States is depleting weapon systems where the Chinese hold the key for those systems being able to be produced in the future. So, I mean, this, from a strategic standpoint, this is a way that China can win a war without having to fire a shot.
Yeah, because we can't fire a shot.
Yeah.
Anyway, listen, I know we're running a little bit low on time here, but I don't want to let you go before we talk about something else we haven't actually addressed on our show yet. I feel a little bit behind the curve here because I think it's really important. And that is on the alleged assassination attempt of President Trump at the Correspondents' White House dinner here a few days back. Now, you've been doing some digging into some of this and talking to some folks. I wonder if you can just tell us a little bit about what you have concluded from what we've seen so far.
Yeah, well, let me just say, how am I qualified to comment on this? During my 4 years at State, I was the deputy director for the Anti-Terrorism Assistance Training Program. So we set up the curriculum across the whole swath of areas of expertise. And one of those was executive protection, VIP protection. And so with that, we had to set the curriculum. We had to make sure the curriculum applied. And then we went out and evaluated to see if what had been taught, if, lessons learned. So I had that as background. But then I've got a good buddy who ran Ronald Reagan's Secret Service detail after Reagan was shot. You don't want to talk to the guy who was there when he got shot. Talk to the guy who kept him safe after that. Anyway, there are so many problems with this. Number one, why is the Trump administration running and portraying this as, oh my God, this was an assassination attempt? Well, did the guy get into the ballroom and fire a shot at Donald Trump? No, that would be an assassination attempt. What happened is this guy breached one of the security checkpoints. And so, and then watch as he runs by, where's the gun? They're led to believe that he was carrying a shotgun, but there's no shotgun visible. So he wasn't carrying a shotgun. He may have had a handgun. And that the handgun is what he allegedly fired. Well, and it was a 380, which is what they call a 9mm short. But then you saw those guys crouching down and shooting him. Okay, and yet when he is on the ground, handcuffed, there's not a single bullet wound in him, and we know that he was not shot because on Monday, he was arraigned in court. He walked into court. He wasn't in a wheelchair having been shot in the legs, and he certainly didn't take any shots in the torso. So you got to wonder, there were a lot of gunfire going off, and they didn't hit a damn thing.
Yeah, and that's what I mean, just to that video Gary's showing just right there. I don't remember. I lost count. 6 or 7 guys all crouched down with pistols, and let's roll it. Yeah, keep it rolling there. Okay, so this guy right there. There. That's about 2 seconds, maybe less than 2 full seconds. Why is he not firing? Why is these guys not firing? Here comes another section. None of them have fired so far.
Well, actually, no, that one guy did fire.
Did he?
Yeah, you can see the muzzle. If Gary rolls it back, you can see the muzzle flash.
So does that mean he's a really bad shot from that close a range?
Yes. Maybe. Okay, watch right there. Oh. Yeah, it flashed. I mean, he got one shot off, but the thing is, how did they catch this guy? Now, see,
they say he tripped.
Yeah, well, good.
That's what they say.
Way to go. The other thing is, so the Secret Service failed here. The security checkpoint should have been down at the end of the hall where that guy started running from, and you have two magnetometers. You got a guy in front and a guy behind, and then 2 more guys back with short-barreled rifles, so that if anybody does try to breach, and particularly if they're carrying a gun, you can then shoot them. Secret Service rules of engagement are you shoot. If someone's got a firearm, you shoot. You don't ask, who are you? Drop it, please. None of that. The other thing, though, that was so odd is when the shooting started, the first person that's taken off the stage was J.D. Vance. Now, that is not Secret Service protocol. And when I saw that, I thought, is Vance secretly been made president and just Trump gets to pretend, letting him think that he's president? And then Trump said, well, no, I countermanded their orders and told them not to. Bullshit. Sorry, that Secret Service is not trained to say, Mr. President, would you like to be removed now? No, their job is grab his ass and haul him out. Whether he likes it or not, their job is to protect him. He's the number one priority, not the vice president. Then you get to this manifesto, and this is where it really gets curious, the connection. Because in this guy's manifesto, this Cole, he writes he's going to target all administration officials except Kash Patel. Well, I learned that part. I learned yesterday that there is a video circulating of Cole, who is an engineering student, where he made a device for a wheelchair to keep the wheelchair from tipping over. And when they draw back in that video, you see his wife, who is Indian, and she is conversing with the wife of J.D. Vance. So there's a connection there. And now you got to say, what is this Indian connection? Because why does he say, everybody but Vance. I think that this was a real guy. I'm not saying that he was conjured up, and he had a pistol, but he may have fired it. Maybe he didn't. That's what's not certain, because I no longer believe anything about the government's story, because they've been touting that as like it was a shotgun. Shotgun wasn't used. You know as well as I do. If you're running along with a shotgun and you try to shoot it, the recoil kick on it as such, you would see that on camera.
Oh,
you don't see that on camera at all. And yet they've convinced most of the audience that he had this shotgun. The other thing though was the immediate social media campaign. All of the Trump influencers that are on social media, they were all putting out the same talking point. If we had only had that ballroom that the Supreme Court says they can't have, this wouldn't have happened. No, the reason this was allowed to happen, and I say allowed to happen, is because of Secret Service incompetence. And
but now are you suggesting that they knew that something was coming and they chose not to stop it ahead of time, or that they just took advantage of the opportunity?
I don't know. It could be either. I say were some clued in and told to set it up this way so that you could create this opportunity? Perhaps the same reason they created an opportunity for the Butler assassination 2 years ago. That because again, and I wasn't just offering my opinion based upon what I've worked on, but I double checked this with my Secret Service buddy, because he wasn't just some run-of-the-mill agent. He was the one that developed the physical training standards for the Secret Service, which they have since abandoned because they were too rigorous. And he was involved with the academy in terms of instruction. So he knows exactly what the protocols are supposed to be. And he's watching this saying they're not following protocol. And so again, even how they set up magnetometers and checkpoints, but the system did work. He never got inside where he could attempt to assassinate. And one other point, with the gun that he's carrying, he got a semi-automatic pistol in California. They limit the number of rounds that you can put in a magazine to 10. So he was already going into a big ballroom with a gun that had very, very, very limited capability, number one. So, but why is the press and the White House, everybody, oh my God, they tried to kill the president. He tried to kill the president. He didn't even get close. He didn't even get in the room. Call it what it is. He breached a Secret Service security checkpoint with a weapon. That's what you can charge him with. Charge him with trying to kill the president. Good luck defending that in court. I don't think that charge will stick, because what's you got to show the evidence that he was ready to kill. And let's say, well, what about his manifesto? He didn't mention President Trump in there. The only one he mentioned that he wasn't going to target is Kash Patel, which you're going, what the hell is this? So, I mean, there are more questions that come out about what's going on, because the Trump administration immediately made it all about the ballroom. And so,
yeah. And what do you make about these reports from a number of the people that were there from the press that say they've been coming to these events for many years, and they said that it has never been open like it was here? They said that it had always been the way you would expect for any event where the president of the United States is going to be at, with all the magnometers, and et cetera, way back where they're supposed to be. And they said this time there weren't. They said you could walk into the lobby just showing your identification card. No, I mean your invitation.
Yeah,
that's
ticket.
it. They didn't have to go do anything to get into the lobby.
Yeah. And that's the other, thing. You got to wonder if was this a setup? And in this case, maybe it was a setup with Trump and the Secret Service knew what they're doing. They're staging an incident to highlight the need for a more secure venue as a way to justify pushing forward. We got to build that ballroom. This wasn't like if this was an assassination attempt. Not only was it poorly planned, What? I'm going to run through the hallway and hope to get inside a room. That's your plan? Yeah. Good luck. Good luck with that. But again, these other audit and the thing, and watch Trump's reaction. So here's a guy who's been shot at in Butler, and experienced a real attempt on his life, so it appears. And then you hear this gunfire, and he's just looking around. And again, he shouldn't have even had the chance to be sitting there looking around, because the Secret Service, their requirement is grab him and move his ass away immediately. They waited 20 seconds before he was off stage. That's not normal.
Yeah. That's definitely not normal.
Yeah. So that's why I said this thing, they've milked it all for this political purpose. And so when I see that, you begin saying, was this guy, was he set up to do this? Was he fingered as somebody that could be manipulated? It's not the first time that the FBI has gone out and tried to organize a terrorist attack, get some people convinced, like the ones that they were going to, I can't remember if they're going to kidnap or assassinate Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, 6 years ago. But, that kind of thing, the FBI has been involved with, staging these things in the past. So you can't put it past them that they did it this time, which further reinforces, oh yeah, if you're going to do this, make sure you don't kill Kash Patel.
Yeah, it's just everything's weird about this, and I can't. It's hard to know what the truth is. But listen, we really appreciate you bringing the truth to it. And by the way, I have one more thing to show you here today, because even though the Iranians didn't turn you into a Lego, AI helps me do so. And so here we have you acted even with your current shirt on.
There we go.
There we have it. The Larry J action figure. Get it at your Lego store soon. Coming out pretty soon.
You know what? You're paying Gary too much, man. He's got too much time on his hands. That's great. Okay, you gotta send that to me there, guys.
Oh yeah, I'll do it as soon as we get off the air here. Appreciate you though. Yeah, so I'm still hoping to get up to your level one of these days. But anyway, super appreciate you coming on today. Always a pleasure to have you on. We're going to have actually one of our buddies on here in about an hour, Doug McGregor, who's going to be talking about some of these same issues, but from a different perspective. And he's also going to be talking about some of the stuff in the Russia-Ukraine war. So you're not going to want to miss that as well. We will see you in about an hour from now. Thank you very much, folks, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Daniel Davis Deep Dive. We don't have sponsors because we hate to hit you over the head with ads. I don't like them. So show a little love back. Subscribe, like, and send this to somebody you care about.